I took a flight from LA to the East Coast, and I do that a lot with my job, but I had a conversation with a guy I'll never forget. This guy said to me, "What do you do for a living?" And I said, "Well, I do lectures in bioethics," my standard cop-out answer when I, don't really want to engage. And most people won't ask what that is. He said, "What's bioethics?" I said, "Well, I do lectures on things like embryo stem cell research, doctor-assisted suicide, and abortion." He said, "Really?" He said, "I agree with you. Every woman should have a right to choose." That set me off. My wife will tell you it is hard for me to walk away from arguments once they start. I said, "Well, actually, that's not my view." He said, "Why not?" I said, "Well, it just isn't. I don't hold that view." He said, "Uh-oh, I know what you're going to tell me." He said, "You're Catholic, and your Pope says abortion's wrong. Therefore, you believe that you can impose your view on me, right?" I said, "No, I'm not Catholic, although the Pope has written very eloquently on abortion. The Gospel of Life is a beautiful, eloquent defense of the pro-life view. But no, that isn't my position that I was going to argue." He said, "Okay, you're one of the religious right majority types, whatever you people are, and you're going to impose that because that's your religious view?" I said, "No." He said, "What were you going to tell me?" I said, "I was going to tell you that I'm pro-life because I believe the pro-life position is true." Men and women, he looked at me like I'd stepped off Mars. He said, "True? Really?" "Yeah, T-R-U-E, true." He said, "You really believe that? It's true?" "Yeah, I do, because there's good evidence for it." Now, I didn't know this, but the guy in front of us had been eavesdropping on the conversation. And he turned around at that point, spread open the chair, stuck his nose through, said, "I was listening to what you just said." No kidding. I said, "Welcome to the conversation. Glad to have you." He said, "I couldn't help overhearing what you just said, that you thought there was good reason to believe the pro-life position was true. I was wondering, do you have evidence for that, or was that just an opinion?" Wrong question to ask a guy who makes a living defending fetuses as human beings. I said, "Sure, I'd be happy to defend that view. First of all, though, may I ask you a question?" I said, "Do you believe newborns are human beings?" This guy said, "No, I believe once it's born, it's a human being." I said, "Fair enough. Would you then be willing to look with me at the 4 differences between a fetus that you say is not human and a newborn that you say is? And let's examine those 4 differences and see if any of them are relevant such that we can say it's okay to kill the fetus, but not okay to kill the newborn." He said, "You know what, that sounds cool, okay." I said, "There's only 4 differences: size, level of development, environment, and degree of dependency. And I'm going to say that none of those are relevant. Let's take a look at them. First, size. Would you agree with me that the fetus is smaller than a newborn?" He jumped all over that. He said, "Oh, absolutely. How can you call something the size of a dot a human being?" So I asked, are large people more human than small people? Men are generally larger than women. Does that mean men deserve more rights than women? You want to try running that by the flight attendant at 39,000 feet? So we went to the next category. We looked at size, and I told him to think of that acronym SLED, S-L-E-D. Size is your first category. Then we went to L, level of development. I said, "Would you agree the fetus or embryo is smaller than a newborn?" He said, "Absolutely." He said, "How can you call something that doesn't even have a functioning brain yet and is not even self-aware a human being?" I said, "If self-awareness and intelligence define us as human beings, that means those that are more intelligent should have the right to exploit those of us whose GPA was not too high in high school. That would also mean that we're all on a gigantic bell curve. We start off with very little rights of personhood and very little self-consciousness, and we gradually gain personhood as we reach our intellectual and physical peaks, and then we gradually lose rights of personhood as we age. Is that your view?" He says, "No, that's an elitist view." I said, "Well, then why are you imposing it on the fetus? Why?" I said, "A 4-year-old girl is less developed than a 14-year-old one. That 4-year-old girl does not even have her reproductive system in place yet. Is she less of a person because of it?" "Well, no," he said. "Well, then why would you rule out the fetus from being human simply because its development doesn't match ours?" We went to the next category, environment or location. He said, "Until it's born, it's not a human being." I said, "Why would you think that?" He said, "Because birth makes it human." I said, "How does where you are have any bearing on who you are? A few hours ago, you walked from the terminal at LAX onto this plane. You changed location. Did you stop being you?" What about when you rolled over in bed last night? You changed location. Did you stop being you? If not, how does a simple journey of 8 inches down the birth canal suddenly transform a non-human tissue blob into a protectable human life we ought to value and respect? How does it do that? He didn't have an answer for that. We went to the final category, degree of dependency. He said to me, until it's viable, it's not a human. I said, if that's the definition of what makes us human, our ability to live independent of anyone or anything, we've got a problem, because there are people on this plane that are not human and we may kill them. How do I know that? Because there are people on this plane who depend on insulin, heart pacemakers, perhaps diabetes medication, and without them, they will not survive. Does that mean they are less human than us? He said, no, I don't like the way that sounds. I said, I don't either. You can see then there's only 4 differences: size, level of development, environment, degree of dependency. None of them are morally relevant, are they?